It's about to start. We'll talk about code or whatever we'll talk about today. It's about to start, so please hang tight while I check that everything is okay. Sound check, camera check, lights check. How's my hair? Oh, wait, I don't have any hair. Maybe put some pants on and I am good to go. So get ready wherever you are, 'cause the stream is about to start. Get ready wherever you are, 'cause the stream is about to start. Hello everyone, let's talk about audio production, and with me here as usual for our Wednesday streams is Arya. How are you doing, Arya?
Good. Hi everybody. Good to be here. Yeah. This feels like it's been a while as well.
Yeah.
So we're getting back into things.
Yeah, so what we have on the menu today is this orchestral piece that I am trying to write. It's a duet, so it was supposed to be relatively simple, but I am struggling with it. So what we are going to do is look at what I wrote, and then you are going to critique what I have, help me make it better. But don't be too harsh, because I have a soft heart. And then you can see that I still have more structure. So one part of my homework was to come up with the structure for the whole piece, and I did that, but I didn't finish writing everything. So I still have more things to do, and I guess we could talk about how to move on from here, which is a common curse in composition. You have a piece, maybe a chorus or maybe a verse, but you don't have the whole thing, and it's hard to go to jump this bridge of having something to having a full piece to work on. How does that sound?
Yeah, sounds good, and it looks good. And I'm never harsh. I'm always very chill about stuff.
I know you are. Right, so let's start by hearing what I already have.
Sure. Interesting. Cool. I like it. I like the overall idea. Cool chord progression. It reminds me of something. I can't put my finger on it, but it's cool. I guess one thing that jumped out at me...
The chord progression I stole from... I think it's Breakout by the Foo Fighters.
Oh, okay. It's a pretty well-known one, because it's got that major sixth and the minor sixth, if I'm not wrong, right? In the key.
You're right. Yeah. So it's E, D. So E major, D major, C sharp minor, C major.
Cool. Yeah. I do like that kind of feeling. I guess one thing that jumped out at me even before hearing anything is in the realm of orchestral music, some people will yell at you if you say verse, pre-chorus, chorus, etc.
Okay.
So there's kind of like the classical vocabulary of it, which is like the exposition, recapitulation, etc. Or just like more simple and modernly, we just say A, B, C, more than saying like verse, chorus. Yeah, that's kind of like a thing that people will do. And maybe like the intro you call an intro, but a verse you can call A, and a chorus you call a B. And then pre-choruses and stuff is interesting because you can say like A prime, or you can just call it a bridge. So like verse and chorus. I remember I was doing an analysis of like a composition by Bach or somebody, and I used like verse and chorus. And our teacher was like, "No, you can't say verse and chorus. This is not Britney Spears." And I was like, "All right, calm down."
Okay, good to know. I guess picking up the language or the jargon of the community is something that's the kind of thing that you cannot do on your own by reading books. So good to know. So I guess this, you would use introduction and bridge, but then A and B for the rest.
Yeah, and even so then like from this point onwards, I guess it depends on how like kind of like strict and rigid you want to be with the rules. But again, another rule is that since your verse and chorus have the same chord progression and the same time signature, your B section is more like kind of like an extension of your A section, right? So your B section is not like a different chord progression or a different rhythm. It's kind of like just an evolution on your A. Yeah. So that would be like how people would call it. Which is totally cool. Like there are many compositions that are like that. One of the most famous ones and one of my favorite just pieces of music of all time is Maurice Ravel's Bolero. Do you know this one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's the same. It's literally the same like kind of motif repeating for like 15 minutes, but it just gets more epic and more epic and more epic. And I read something about this as well, that he was kind of forced to do it this way because he was having trouble like composing kind of the classical way. I don't remember the story enough to talk about it, but I remember there being a story that he wrote the song this way, and I think it's like one of the best pieces of orchestral music. Really kind of diving into texture and stuff. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, I like
composition was.
I like the orchestration on that one because it is the same but never repeats, and I guess that's the kind of music that I like. So first of all, one of the things that I really like is this major minor ambiguity. So I go from E major and I borrow chords from E minor, like C major would be part of the E minor. So I do that a lot. And another thing that I do like is this kind of repetition, and there is no Command C, Command V on the composition yet. Everything is different, but you are right. It doesn't change in terms of the chords or the time signature or even the tempo. So yeah, I guess I am struggling in the same ways that Ravel struggled, maybe. And I did struggle to write this. I mean, it's so simple. It's just one line or two that kind of repeats and changes. And it took me 5 hours to come up with this.
Yeah, like I like the composition itself. I see you got some like CC action there. I guess you were wondering like where to go from here, and I guess with compositions like this where you're kind of like starting with an idea, and then the idea grows and grows and evolves, there's really two ways you can go. There's really not any other way. You can kind of go a hybrid of these two, or you can just totally like switch lanes. But like you can basically, you're starting from a simple idea and you're gradually growing it and growing it and growing it. And you can just keep growing it until it like is like insanity, and then you just stop. Or you can do what's called like is this symmetrical? I think it's symmetrical. A symmetrical composition where you're growing in layers, and then at one point you start reducing layers and coming back down, so that the beginning and the end of your composition are like the same. They're like the same simplicity, and then you go on this journey, and then you land on the same idea. So these are kind of like the two directions you can take this for the rest of the song. Of course, it can also just change the key, change the rhythm, just like totally go to another thing. And that's another thing people do, like an ABA macro style, where you have this whole thing, thinking of this whole thing as your A section, going to a whole other composition, and then transitioning back to this and kind of ending it.
Yeah, I am not sure what we are going to do. I guess we can explore a little bit of both approaches and see how that comes out. But one thing that I was thinking about is just, let's explore this a bit further. So here, the cello is more like longer notes, establishing the harmony, while the flute is doing more interesting things. And here it's more like the other way around. Here the cello is doing more interesting things. You can see that the rhythm is different, but the flute stays in longer notes. So what I was thinking about doing is maybe taking this part and playing them together on part A or B, or the bridge, or I don't know, or A prime. So that the two complex
so like
rhythms would play against each other.
The two busier bits.
Yeah.
I
don't know how that's going to pan out, but I thought about exploring that. And I guess before I start trying to fill in the rest of this, I wanted to dive deeper into what I did, because I'm sure that there will be some workflow tips or composition tips that I can get. And then the second part could be better in light of that information. So
cool.
Do you want to dive into what I wrote and how I wrote it? You mentioned how there is CC action going. I can explain what I've done there and what I don't necessarily like about it. So, first thing that stands out to me in terms of like workflow really is that I am using two articulations. I am using, I forget the names of the articulations on the flute. So I'm using long notes and staccatissimo. So staccatissimo and long notes. And I'm using that setup that you suggested, where I have two instances of the plugin listening on different channels. And then I mapped a keystroke on the MIDI inline editor, find shortcut, that one. So I have keyboard shortcuts that allow me to send different events to different channels. So I can write something and I can change the articulation very easily. And New Morning Recordings is here saying, "Hi guys, greetings from Italy. Hello, great to have you here."
Hello.
And greetings from Portugal.
Greetings from Canada.
Yeah. Okay, so that works very well, because I do like the notion of having one part on one track. I guess the alternative would be for me to have two tracks for the articulations, but then it could be harder for me to track things, especially when I don't think there is any case here where that happens, but I could be alternating fast between techniques, especially on the flute. Maybe not so much on the cello. The problem is that when I am writing something, so let's go to here. When I'm writing something, I can only write on the first articulation, the first channel, and then I can use my keyboard shortcut to change that. I would like to have a sticky mode where I would change to that and all the notes that I write will be staccatissimo until I switch back to long notes. Is that possible?
You could do that. Yeah, it's called set events, new events or something, basically. Set new events. Maybe it's something that's not in the inline and it's only in the MIDI editor. So, because, yeah, the one that you have is setting selected events, and then there's one that's called set new events. Yeah, set channel for new events. And then you can just switch. I have them on a toolbar. I guess you don't need all 16, so you can kind of make hotkeys. And, yeah, I guess you also are starting to see that, like, it's weird, man. Like, I don't want to shit talk Reaper. We shit talk Reaper too much. But, like, not all the same actions are available between the inline editor and the MIDI editor. And if it was like, okay, like super complex stuff is in the MIDI editor and then other stuff is in the inline, I'd be okay with that. But it seems very arbitrary. Like, yeah, setting selected events is possible in the inline and setting new events is not. Which is why I ultimately like don't do everything in the inline. I do most of it in the MIDI editor. Yeah, but that's the way to do that.
Yeah, okay. I do like the workflow on the inline MIDI editor because it's just so simple to have everything next to, like right now I can see that the notes are related here, and I really like this perspective where things are not superimposed, because I could in the MIDI editor open both MIDI items. But I prefer to have separate lanes, but have them synced. I really like this, so I'm going to try to come up with something that works with the inline MIDI editor, but we'll see. And one funny thing is that when I was working on the flute parts, when you click, you hear the note. That's great.
Yeah.
But there is one. I don't know which one, but there is one note that sounds exactly like the chime that happens when you receive an email in Mail app or when you receive a notification in January macOS. And then I was like working on the thing and I would click and I was like, did I get a notification? Oh no. So I guess now I know like how to make that chime. It sounds almost exactly like the macOS one when you get a notification. Right, so okay, another workflow thing that came up when I was writing this is, I forget. I'll come back to that eventually. But let's talk about something else, which is when I am doing staccatissimo, as far as I understand from having watched the videos by the Spitfire people who developed the library, the orchestral library that I'm using, you're supposed to set the velocity of the MIDI events for that kind of articulation. And then for longer notes, the velocity doesn't matter that much. That's why you see that I didn't change the velocity. But what matters is the mod wheel and the expression. But I set the wrong lane here. I am using the volume lane. So I guess one thing is I probably should have another lane and copy and paste. But it doesn't matter all that much. It's just that instead of setting this slider, which was what I was supposed to, I'm setting this slider. But they sound the same. But the point being, I am setting the volume, I guess, or the loudness using velocity for short notes.
So hold on, quick question. They literally sound the same?
If you change this setting, it does not sound the same. This is... you're going to hear more of the air on the long notes, for instance.
Yeah.
But this expression in volume, the master volume, are exactly literally the same. They are...
Oh, that's lame a little bit.
It's kind of an artifact. So we talked about this in more depth on the stream last week on Monday with Dale. We were talking about the general MIDI conventions. And the idea back then, when general MIDI was established, was that expression, which is CC11. Did I get that right? Is it CC11 or 7?
Yeah.
I always get the two mixed up. Okay.
I think you're right.
Okay, so expression is CC11. That was supposed to be what I am doing here, like part of the composition, and longer notes will fade in and out and that sort of thing. And then CC7, which is volume, was supposed to be used for mixing. And then, of course, we back then didn't have DAWs that would have this slider. So CC7 was supposed to sort of replace this knob. It's something that you probably just set and forget, or maybe automate like I am doing here, but you wouldn't touch as often as you touch this. But the actual implementation of this whole shenanigans looks like this. Poly, what was the name of the plugin that we covered? Oh, I forget the name of the plugin, so I don't.
Not polysynth.
I think it was multi something. Yeah, I don't remember the name of the plugin that we covered on the stream, and I could find it, but I'm not going to look into it that much. It's just, in essence, what it boils down to is you take this value, you multiply by this value, and you multiply by the sample coming in. So you just control volume that way. So yeah, it is literally the same to move this slider or move this slider. Or at least it's supposed to on a well-implemented plugin, which I think this is. So
I think for East-West, Expression does some other things. Like I know there's a library that's a solo violinist. It's not like a violin section. And if you play with the Expression, it kind of changes the bowing. So if your Expression is really high, it, like the attacks have like a shrill start to them, like, and then the more down you are, it's got a more like.
But isn't that supposed to be
just
the other slider, which is dynamics and
mod wheel? Like the mod wheel does another thing which switches between legatoing and when you play a new note for non-slur playing.
So let's fix this. So when I play this, you're going to see that the wrong slider is moving. This slider is moving. Well, I need to go to
That was the note. It's F sharp, isn't it? It's that. Yeah, that sounds so much like the notification.
Yeah, you can see the wrong slider bouncing. I wanted that slider to be bouncing. So I guess next workflow kind of thing. How do I take all my volume information and transfer that to Expression?
I know how to do that only in the MIDI editor.
Oh, sure.
I don't know if in the inline it's possible or not.
Here we are.
Yeah, and then the action name. Just look for copy CC. I think it's something like that. We will find it. Oh yeah, so yeah, what I do is copy selected CC lane, CC events in active item to lane under mouse cursor. That's what I do. So basically, you gotta assign a hotkey to this
because it's gonna work on the mouse cursor.
It's under mouse cursor. Yeah. So give it a hotkey.
Well, I also use this one, so I don't need a hotkey for that.
Sure.
Okay. So what I have to do is I have to first create a lane for Expression 11, and then I'm going to touch that lane. But I'm going to remove this point.
And then select the volume.
Oh, I guess by selecting the volume, I am going to be switching lanes, right? So I'm going to select the volume.
But it's the last click lane, so I think that's how you do it.
Okay. Okay. So I got them all. And then I copy CC. Or maybe CC copy. No, I am in the main section.
No, oh.
And then run that and close. And then... No.
Wait. Hold on. I need to do this on my end to remember it, because I think you shouldn't copy. You shouldn't select the points. You should select the lane. If I remember it right.
I got it, Arya. I got it. It was what I was thinking. I selected the points, and by doing that, I switched lanes. So now, with the points selected, I touch the right lane, and that did the trick. So now I gotta do is just
so
come here
select first,
and goodbye volume lane. And now rinse and repeat. And Bo is here. Hello, Bo. Now rinse and repeat.
Hi, Bo.
For I was in the flute, so let's do it for the cello. Could I just select, copy, and paste? Oh, it goes in the cursor. So I could do that.
Oh, select everything and then copy and paste?
Yeah.
That works, but sometimes like there's sync issues. Like you gotta just be really careful with stuff like that. You gotta make sure you're on the exact point.
I guess it works because it doesn't have to be too precise, and I guess that's the next part. I watched. Oh, I copied the mod wheel. That is wrong. Undo. What the hell is going on?
Wait, this is the channel that you already did it on, the cello, no? Or did you start with the flute? I don't remember what you did.
I started with the flute, but it seems like the cello is also right. See? Expression.
Well, but this is what you just did, no?
Velocity of velocity, and then mod wheel, and then volume. Volume is also in there, so volume is still here. And it really does...
So your mod wheel and volume were no, they're not the same. Yeah, so you just need to copy volume to expression and keep the mod wheel.
Come on. Yeah, there you go. Okay. Now I think I got it.
I use the under mouse cursor one, and that way I just select one, go like move my mouse somewhere, hit it, and it will copy it. But
and I guess the timing of this doesn't have to be too precise. But yeah, I get your point. It makes sense, and your way of doing it kind of makes sense too. Okay, so let's double check our work. If I go to a part where I have long notes on the cello and I go to my effects on the long notes, I should see these two moving and that one not moving. Similarly for the flute, where I have long notes on the flute, for instance here.
So interesting, the velocity when it's long notes doesn't matter. It's always the same, and you use the expression to change it, to change the intensity, the mod wheel to change like the intensity of the blowing.
As far as I understand from having watched, what is the name of the person? Christian Henson, something like that, his name?
Yeah, Chris Henson, yeah.
So I watched his videos on how to get started with orchestral composition, so I wouldn't make a fool of myself on the stream. And he mentioned that he does that. He automates the expression and mod wheel, and he doesn't write that in. I wrote that in with command, click and drag. And he
performs it?
Yeah, he performs it. But whatever you are doing, that's what he does. He changes these two MIDI channels, information. And I guess that's why the plugins are designed this way, right? Because he literally has that on his left hand, and he doesn't touch this all that much until he gets to mixing.
Yeah, volume. Yeah.
Which I did kind of got into, because you can see automation here on this lane, and I'm automating the volume here. I'm not automating, as you would have guessed, I'm not automating the plugin. I am automating the volume on the track. And My reason for doing that is I kind of found it harder to work with CC lanes than to work with automation, just regular envelopes.
Oh, absolutely.
They kind of look the same in most ways, but they're not. And I found this much more ergonomic to work with.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah, totally like different, and you know, like, I don't know, I guess it can be argued if that's a good or bad thing. To me, it makes lots of sense that like envelopes and CC lanes kind of work differently. One thing I was gonna tell you, because you were mentioning you don't like it when in the MIDI editor you have like the two lines superimposed on top of each other. So one argument I would make here is that is really, really useful when you get to orchestral composition, because in orchestral composition, you're like using multiple instruments to create, let's say, one sound or a few sounds, right? So your bass section is like a few instruments, your melody is a few instruments. So it's good to know like kind of which octaves are super occupied and which octaves are more wide open. Like it really helps me like figure out my range, like think of my voice leading and like create a narrative. So when I want something to become shrill, I know exactly, okay, like all the stuff on these octaves below can go up. You know what I mean? So it is something that I would advise you try to get a little used to. Because when you get to orchestral composition, yeah, having stuff like on top of each other really helps you see a kind of big picture of your composition.
I see.
And in something like this, right? Yeah, like you don't even like with in the case of flute and cello, you don't even have that issue of them like falling right on top. But yeah, I find that very useful. So I don't know.
Okay, that makes sense.
That's it. If you like inline, you like inline, you know?
Well, I guess it depends on the case, and maybe for orchestral composition, it makes sense to use the MIDI editor. Maybe for drawing drums, it doesn't, when I want to have my drums next to other things that are not necessarily MIDI, and then in that case, there's no way I'm going to have a waveform here. At least I enabled that setting that you helped me find that links the two. So at least I can map between bar 7 here and bar 7 there. But okay, let's work with this way, because then I will learn something new. What is this? What is these faint lines? They are not actual data?
Oh, no, I think that means one of them has data there and one of them doesn't. Is that what that means? I think so. If you open the track list, on your MIDI icon, it's that one, yeah. And now switch to cello by pressing that arrow thing. Yeah, so on the cello there's expression data there, and on the flute there isn't.
Oh, kind of cool. That's useful.
Yeah, that's useful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, but let me get into why I had to do automation here. And that is because the difference in, maybe that's just something of this plugin, this library, but the difference in volume between techniques is like too great. It's just too big of a difference. And you can see that I am using sort of loud notes over here, and more it's quieter. It's not up here, because velocity is almost at the top. Some notes are 127. They are the hardest they can be. And over here, I am not near that. But even then, I had to lower the volume because the long notes were much louder. Is this something that is common? Do you think it's just a quirk?
Between staccato and is it between staccato and like non-staccato?
It's between long and spiccato.
Okay, yeah. I mean, in cellos, it makes sense. Because if you think about it, like the first moment of striking a cello, you're not generating a lot of volume. When you get really into it, that's when, so yeah, like with strings, the difference between like staccato and legato, or the difference between I mean, of course, like it goes without saying, the difference between pizzicato and legato is a lot in loudness because you need some time to excite the string with a bow. So it makes some sense. I mean, but then that becomes a question of like, okay, there's like naturalness versus like practicality. You know what I mean? So it could be argued, or another thing I guess you can do in this case is using the volume CC so that you don't have to do this. That could be an idea. So since you have them on two different, like you have two different plugins, the volume for one is like at 0, the other one is at -6. That could be something to do. But yeah,
that's clever. Yeah, I haven't thought of that. I can actually put this to good use now that I am doing the expression over here.
Yeah,
that makes a lot more sense, and I guess
and
it boils down
like,
to
when
the
you
thing.
Switch, you don't have to automate.
Yeah, so this is, I guess, more true to the original intention of this setting, because I am mixing between techniques by doing that. Yeah. I want to do that. I will not do it now because it's just busy work, but I want to do that. And another thing, coming back to the way that I am doing the CC data, I'm drawing this win and Chris is performing it, but I didn't really like the workflow of drawing this in. It was kind of annoying to get things right. So I was thinking that maybe doing just this would be better. It may not be as organic, but then again, I can always move this around freely. And I guess Chris is definitely never going to do this because as far as I understand, this kind of curve is something that Reaper implements, but Logic does not. But I guess my question is, how do you usually do this, if at all?
I sometimes draw like you do, like just with the mouse modifier. You can also perform like the like overdub replace or latch replace. That's good because you can play or edit your notes and then on a second pass come and like perform it. That could be one cool thing to do. There are two kind of fancy things you can also use. One is especially if you're doing more or less the same thing, one is the Padre LFO generator that can generate like an LFO as a CC, and that could be like randomized and all kinds of stuff you can do to it to like make it not be just like a sine wave going through your project. And then there are JS underscore warp tilt etc. stuff that once you have written a few CC points, you can use it to like kind of do all kinds of warps and all sorts of things. But what about drawing do you not like? Is it like not precise enough, or does it put too many points in, or what do you not like about it, I guess?
The reason I didn't like it so much is that maybe it's just because I am using a touchpad and not a mouse, but it was hard for me to just literally come here and draw. I have Snap on. It's literally just hard for me to land in the right location where I wanted to go. It was just a little bit annoying. It wasn't the end of the world. It's just a little bit annoying, and I thought there could be a better way. And how do you usually do it? Do you usually do this kind of thing?
Yeah. And I usually just draw it, and if I need to finesse it, I finesse it. But with some things I do perform it, and actually woodwinds are one of the things where I perform it. So I'm probably most of the time like can't perform at the same time as playing, especially because I like to use my right hand for both. so like I prefer it that way. But yeah, I either perform or edit the notes, and then I just put it in latch replace. And then I just play it and I perform the kind of expression or whatever else that performing.
And to perform that,
but
you
yeah,
have
sometimes I
a
also
MIDI
just
controller,
draw.
I suppose, because here on the interface, I
Yeah.
could perform changes to volume, for instance. If I go into latch mode, I can switch this slider, or I can move this slider, and it's going to write the automation for me. There is nothing equivalent to that for CC. Is there?
Oh, like that you can use a mouse to do.
Yeah. Well, I guess I can
think
always
there
open the
is a
plugin
way.
interface, but that's not the same. It's
Yeah.
going to create an envelope.
I think there is a way, and I won't be able to guide you through the way, but I can quickly do it on my side and then tell you.
Okay, and meanwhile, New Morning records. It's not New Morning Recording. It's New Morning Records. Has to go. So bye. See you later, and make sure you watch this on demand later. And thanks for the nice words. New Morning Recording says your live chats are always very interesting. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm looking for the thing that I'm looking for. Hold on. If I don't figure it out in like 2 seconds, I'll get back to you on it. But I remember there's an easy way of doing that. Oh, okay, yeah. So if you want to, or you don't, hold on. So let me make sure I understand you. You don't want to use envelopes. You want to directly move a mouse and perform a CC, right?
I don't really want to do it, but I was thinking that I don't know how to do it, and I wanted to learn if it was possible.
So there's a few ways of like kind of getting around not using a MIDI controller. One is to use Arya control MIDI. And there, like if you open the Arya control MIDI, you can enable this control change lane, and then you move a slider and you write that, and then that becomes your CC. And then you can change that to any of the lanes that you want. Yeah. And I think we can even test this. I think if you like go to the fourth slider, choose the expression, and then you just put you don't need to like arm the envelope. If you just put yourself in MIDI overdub replace, I think it'll just write to the CC. We can test this if you want.
Yes.
And if that didn't work, next week I'll tell you how because I have done it, but I just don't remember exactly how.
Okay, I'm going to create a new MIDI item here because I don't want to mess with what I already have.
Sure.
And then what you are saying is that I should have this on MIDI, but probably I want to not record inputs. I probably want to record outputs, right? Because it's a plugin that is going to be generating this data. Am I right?
Yeah. I think you got it. Yeah. I think that's basically all you got to do.
And then I enable, let's do
enable it and choose a lane.
Mod wheel, go into recording.
And if I'm not mistaken, Leandro, you also need to be in overdub replace, touch replace. So right click on the record arm button and record. Oh yeah, so you gotta go. Oh, maybe you don't have to be in record auto. You gotta be in overdub. Yeah, latch replace. What if Arya control MIDI is in your input effects, and then you put this on latch replace or touch replace?
Let's see if just this works. And sure. I'm going to undo that, and then I'm going to redo it.
The plugin goes to input effects.
And what am I doing? When I create a new track by default, I have that mode that I like. I like MIDI overdub. I played with all of them, and that's the one that makes more sense to me. So I can just drop this plugin there.
But you got to drop it in input effects, not track effects.
I think so.
I think.
But I also want to try that.
Try both, yeah, all right.
Yeah, that's not doing anything, but...
It's weird because it's sending MIDI. but it's somehow not being written, which is name.
Oh, I don't have this enabled for recording. That should affect things. Okay, that's what I was expecting,
Yeah, there
but
you go.
it couldn't hurt for us to give this a try. Oh. By default, it gets my microphone, which is not a good thing. By default, it gets my microphone. I want MIDI. I don't think that is supposed to work, but... Okay. So I guess this experiment is kind of nice. Not that I want this workflow. I'm probably not gonna use it, but it answers a question that I had, another question that I had, which is, why would you ever want to use input effects if you can use output effects or even freeze stuff, and then you always have more possibilities and control? You can freeze, you can render, but why would you want input effects? It's just making your machine slower.
So many reasons.
Tell me.
Especially with MIDI. With MIDI, like most MIDI effects, you can put as input effects. Cause imagine, okay, I have this plugin that I really love. It's made by an Iranian person. It's a way of kind of like bridging. What is it called? Yes, Insta Scale. So Insta Scale is it's a really cool way of kind of thinking about audio, because instead of you playing a scale with your keyboard, you play scale degree differences with your keyboard. So what does this mean? Say you choose the key of C minor, okay? If you press A, you play C. From there, if you press B, you will play D because that's the second degree. If you play C, you will play E flat because that's the third degree. But if you play C again, you go up a third degree up from E flat. So you'll end up at A flat. So if you press, for example, if you want to run up and down the scale, you press A, B, 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 B.
I see.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was going to ask you how is that different from transposing the keyboard, but it's like as if every key you press, you're transposing the keyboard.
Exactly. And then, so if you press like A, B, C, D, C, B, A, what you actually will get is C, D, F, B flat, and then you go up another third degree, D. It's crazy. It's really crazy and cool, and a really cool way of like playing stuff where like I'm not a good keyboard player who can do like big skips, but with this plugin is really good to do. So I mean, if I use that plugin as an effects, when I look at my MIDI, it's just going like A, B, B, C, G, 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 etc. And it may not be in key, but if you put it as input effects, the melody that you play is actually generated as what comes out.
That makes a lot of sense. So I guess MIDI may be the reason why input effects makes sense. But other than MIDI, do you use input effects for like, let's put a compressor and EQ and distortion and saturation on input effects? That makes no sense to me.
Like maybe not those things, but I do. I put a few things in my input effects. My tuner plugin is on the input effects so that it doesn't need to process the tuning once the recording has happened. It's a pre-item effects, right? So in my signal, I care about tuning. Once it's an item, like I should have, I don't care about the tuning. I should have solved that before. But also, like, if you're recording in a, like when I record Foley and stuff like that, or whenever I do any kind of recording where it's, where I'm in like a noisy, hummy area, like even let's say my guitar, I have my high pass filter on input effects at like 80 hertz. And the point of doing that is that once the waveform that I see already is missing the hum that would otherwise affect the shape of the waveform. So my high pass filter and my my tuner is on there. And again, like even compressor, like having a compressor at like the ratio of 1.2 to 1 or something, and threshold at like -40 just evens out your waveform. It's something that you would do anyway, and it would just give you a waveform that looks a little closer to the final product. So I use it a lot, but I understand like it's totally possible never to use it at all. Completely legitimate to do that as well.
I guess what you would probably like is something that I would like very much is not destructive editing. I don't necessarily want to commit to something, but I would like to be able to recompute the peaks. Maybe not by default every time, but I would like to be able to recompute the peaks applying some of the effects so that I can see the result. And I think that would be nice when you're working with things like compression, especially if you're teaching what compression does. You can quickly go back and forth and say, yeah, this is what the waveform looks like when you apply compression. Similar to what you can do in the interface for RX. You can you have a list of effects and you can go back and forth and you see the effect on the waveform.
Yeah, massive. That would be massive in Reaper. And even some people suggest another thing, which I think the Reaper system is really weird about, which is parents. You know, on parents, you see like the ghost outline of stuff, but it shows just the ghost outline of every individual waveform rather than it would be cool if it summed them and showed that. And in case of MIDI, it just shows you a bunch of MIDI. But it doesn't actually sum them. So it shows mono as mono, stereo as stereo. And even if you have a few mono signals, they're just superimposed on top of each other in a nonsensical way. Whereas it would be cool if it summed them. At least giving you an option, because I'm sure that's like CPU-wise, you know, intensive.
Yeah, it has to give you an option because it is intensive. Because it is going to run your effects chain over the whole audio to get you there.
Basically.
Yeah, and I guess it sort of exists in the form of rendering or freezing. You can even go into your effects chain. You can say, okay, I want to freeze up to this point, right? Freeze track up to last non-offline or up to last selected. So you can do that, and you are going to see the waveform of the effects already applied, and you can go back and change them. So it's sort of what we want, but it is not super ergonomic to do that, I don't think, anyway.
Yeah, it would be dope, or even like for it not to be CPU intensive if it was an action. And when you press the action, it does it. And then if you want to regenerate it, you do the action again. Maybe it'd be like marginally faster than actually rendering it. I don't know.
Yeah, or it could do the thing that non-linear editors, the kind of video editors like Premiere do this, where when you apply an effect, it's going to, in the background, it's going to start rendering the waveform. And then if you want to see it, it will have already been cached. But that's usually not resource light. It's not light on your machine, and Reaper is light on your machine, so I guess it doesn't go with the ethos of Reaper.
Yeah, I guess,
Right. Let's talk about the composition, I guess, so far.
Sure.
So I am going to, again, show you what I have done, and you can tell me what I could be doing better. If I am using this workflow of using the MIDI editor, not the inline one, but the MIDI editor, how do you usually, I know how to do it, but I bet that there are better ways of doing it. So how do you usually switch from flute to cello and back? I am looking at all of them, and I can open this to switch, but how do you usually do it?
I either use the track list, or if you, in the preferences, there's an option called one MIDI editor per, and you can have it per item, per track, or per project.
I have it per project.
You have it per project. Yeah, so if you just double click on any of the items in the arrange view, that also switches it. I
don't even have to double click. I can just click. And it switches.
Oh, single click. Okay, yeah, you're right. It is single click. It's not double click. Yeah. So that's one way of doing it. But yeah, like if I'm really like, if my MIDI editor is full screened, I will just use I'll just use the, I can't talk today. I'll just
track
use
list.
the track list.
Yeah. Do you
another action that you would find useful, I think, is SWS/FNG show only used CC lanes.
I suppose it's in the media.
And that's good. Yeah. That's good for when you like switch between two items and they are using different CC lanes. You hit that and it hides all the irrelevant stuff. You can even make a cycle action, because I saw you were hiding your CC lane. So you can make a cycle action that is, you press it once, it hides all CC lanes. Press it again, shows all used CC lanes.
That is indeed something that I think would be useful. So show only used CC lanes, and it's available on the media editor. Is it available on the inline media editor? No, it seems like the inline media editor, though being my favorite, it doesn't seem to receive a lot of love.
I think, and I'm not sure about this, but this is my theory. I think go to the MIDI inline editor and just search for SWS. Are there any SWS actions in the inline editor? Because I think there isn't. Oh, there are some stuff. Oh, but those are just contextual toolbars. So yeah, it feels like either like when they made SWS inline editor wasn't a thing, or possibly the SWS people were like, we're just doing MIDI stuff.
And is there a way to hide all CC?
Yeah, I think it's called hide all CC lane.
Hide all CC lanes.
Yeah. So you can make like a cycle action. That's what I have.
I think what I want is toggle used CC. Toggle CC. Let's see.
Is that another one?
No, but it seems like that's the one that we want, and that's the one that I'm probably gonna have to make. Toggle all CC events under selected notes. No. Toggle hide all CC lanes except lane under mouse cursor. No. Yeah, it doesn't seem like that exists.
I made a cycle action because maybe there is something, but I was just like, okay, I got all the info that I need, so I'm just gonna do that.
Yeah,
so it to your actions to
toggle used CC lanes. That's what we need. That's the action we want. That's the cycle action you made, right? Essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I tend not to use cycle actions. You can see that I have none. I just write scripts instead.
Yeah, it definitely will be a help to the community, you know.
Yeah, it's not a huge progress. It's not a huge change, but it is something. Right. So composition. Oh man, when I have this mode enabled and I go to the left, because of the piano roll here, I don't get to see the beginning. I have to pull this out and do that. There is no way for me to hide this part of the interface.
Yeah, you can't. I guess I never noticed this because my projects always start at measure like -4 and I start writing on measure 1, which is an old like superstition, but I just still do it because I know you can insert time, but I just like to have time to begin with.
Fair. I usually do that, but because I knew that this project was going to be MIDI only, I usually do that because I'm usually recording things and I want to have some pre-roll. But because I knew that this was going to be MIDI, and in fact, I did not perform any of this, I wrote everything with a cursor, so I didn't see much of a finish. But that said, I wrote this part first, and then I realized I need something before that because the cello hitting like... I thought that was too much.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like a Yeah, it doesn't feel like an intro.
Yeah, so then I inserted 4 bars. So I guess you are right. Should have done that. And if I go to ripple and move, it moves automation, moves everything.
It moves automation, everything. Yeah, markers, all that stuff.
So I can just come here and give myself, I usually do 2. Don't need 4. And then, where is it? Project settings.
I think it's project settings. Yeah, set 0. Yeah.
And then minus 1, right? Because then it's measure -1, measure 0.
-1, 0, 1. Yes.
Isn't that odd that we have a measure 0?
Well, if you have a measure -1, wouldn't it make sense to have a 0 versus
From a
going
programmer's
from -1 to
perspective,
1?
of course, it makes a lot of sense. It's like the number line. But from a musical perspective, I think of this as measure -1, -2, -1, 1.
True. I guess you will find that everything in Reaper makes sense from a programmer's perspective, possibly more than an artist. Though Justin is an artist, but yeah, like it's very engineering, right?
It is, and that's one of the things that I like about it. In fact, I am going to talk about something that I did last week. I went into the rest of the menus, and I spent a lot of time here on the mouse modifiers. It's kind of a funny story. Why did I do that? Because I think I mentioned this before. I don't think it makes a lot of sense for the default behavior when you click and drag stuff to be time selection. Makes more sense to be item selection, right? That, at least for me. So then I went in here, all these sections, all the actions that you can perform in all these sections, and I changed everything so that it did what I wanted. Great. That was a lot of time. Then I learned, and as I was doing this, I kept thinking,
oh, there.
Do you see where I'm going?
There must be a better way. Yeah.
You can see that nothing is modified here. So yeah, there is a better way. So I came up with all of this, and I started engineering the keyboard or the mouse modifiers so that they made sense. Things like everything that is deleted is going to be option and that kind of thing. And that's the default in some parts of the interface, but not in all of them. And then, but now I'm running out of modifiers. Okay, I'll use control. In the end, it turns out that I learned that for it to make sense, I have to have control as a modifier for some things because we don't have enough modifiers with just command, option, shift. Yeah. And that was one of my pet peeves because control doesn't work like a modifier in the rest of the operating system. It works as right click. When you hold control and click, it works as right click in any other app in macOS. But I had to use control as a modifier for things. And then I started this other endeavor because I learned that you can change mouse modifiers using actions. Look at this.
Action, yeah.
So I thought, okay, here's what I can do. I can bundle some of these actions together to pretend that I have, honest to goodness, tools, because that's the mental model that I have. I think it makes a lot more sense, like in Illustrator, in Inkscape, in all these other apps, you have
Logic Pro,
even in Logic Pro and Audacity, you have a toolbar, and now you are in time selection mode, and now you are in item selection mode, and now you are in deletion mode, and that sort of thing. Or razor editing is a big one too. That could be a mode. Mm-hmm. And it seems like some people started some tools like this, but no one did every tool, like a real toolbar. So I decided to just embrace.
I did that. I did a Logic Pro tool thing where I did the useful ones like scissor tool, marquee tool, fade tool. I didn't do like rename tool. I never use that in Logic anyway. But one problem that I ran into with that is with Logic, you can select 2 tools, or you can even select 3 tools with the preference. But with those actions, you can't do that.
Yeah, I even learned
can't
about
have a
this cool
control
kind of
tool.
hidden feature that if you have an action on the toolbar that is that sort of action, an action that splits, for instance, and you right-click,
You can right click.
and then you are temporarily into that mode. And that was sort of like what I wanted. So I started doing that. But then I decided, okay, but what if I embrace the method? What if I embrace what Reaper does instead of trying to change Reaper? And then I learned about this setting. Control simulates right-click everywhere on the interface. It just makes Reaper behave like every other app in macOS. And then when you come here to the arrange view, there is this right drag modifier. And if you have control, then control left drag behaves as right drag. And then all my modifications are necessary. They do exactly the same.
Yeah.
They make control be a modifier like that. So now I am just using control as a modifier to do this or to do that. And I didn't have to change a lot of the defaults. I did change some of them, like control and drag used to copy the last selected MIDI item or item in general. That doesn't really make sense to me. I always want a new empty MIDI item. So I did change some of them.
So you don't use a mouse?
No, I use a trackpad.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Yeah, for trackpad, what you do makes a lot of sense. For me, like, I'd rather, because if you have all 4 modifiers, then you get 16. And after like a little bit of memorizing, like, it just gives me so many options. And the cool thing with control is, like, if I need to do something kind of wacky, I always use control, because I know nothing by default is assigned to control. So, like, you know, if you set something to like Command and G or any mouse modifier to like Command left click, it may be something. Control is never anything, and I got a mouse. But yeah, cool. I didn't know that control and so that's, I guess, for people who don't have a mouse, control and clicking is right click.
Yes, and the unfortunate side effects of this is that now control is no longer available for keyboard shortcuts.
Shortcut, yeah.
Because, and that shouldn't be the case, right? It should be the case that Reaper at least I think, it should look at this setting. If you are interacting with the mouse, if you're interacting with the keyboard, I should have control as a modifier for the keyboard to trigger actions.
And it doesn't do that.
It doesn't do that.
Oh, lame. I suppose, I mean, maybe the way the pref works is that it just kind of mounts on top of the Mac thing. Because, you know, in Mac, you can edit shortcuts. Can you use control for that stuff?
Oh, yeah. Control is a modifier for shortcuts all over the place in the operating system. Or at least in other apps. I'm not sure about the Mac OS apps, like the Apple-made apps.
Yeah, the Mac's own. Yeah.
But in Visual Studio Code, for instance, oh, no, I am wrong. I do know. I use it all the time. So there is this text editor that has been around for 30, 40 years at this point. It's called Emacs. And the way that you navigate in Emacs, you can use the arrow keys, but more commonly what you do is you use Control and then N for next line, P for previous line, and A for beginning of line, E for end of line, and that sort of thing. And those keyboard shortcuts work in macOS across the board in every text box that you see in macOS. So yeah, Control is a standard keyboard shortcut, and it's used all over the place, and I use it all over the place, actually.
Then I think you should report this as a bug. It could be a really easy fix for them.
Yeah, but it's not the end of the world, because as it turns out, another thing that I used to do, I guess you remember that one, is I used to come here to the keyboard shortcuts and I customized everything to get rid of any keyboard shortcut that I didn't know what it did or I didn't know how to use. And then I came up with my own thing. Like, for instance, in Visual Studio Code, the way that you hide the bottom pane is Control-J or Command-J. So I did that for showing and hiding the dock instead of Option-D and that sort of thing. But then I realized, you know what? what am I getting from all of this? Not much. So I reverted to the defaults, and I am learning the defaults, and I'm changing them on demand. When there's something that really doesn't make sense to me, I go there and change it. But I'm not trying to make Reaper behave like Logic with its toolbar, or like Visual Studio Code with the keyboard shortcuts. I'm just embracing Reaper for what it is. And I guess the lesson is that I learned that Reaper is actually very well designed, because when I set up to design mouse modifiers that made sense, I ended up designing more or less what Reaper does.
Yeah, Reaper, good stuff.
Yes, good stuff. Right, so composition.
Okay, composition.
Third try.
Every time we get, then we're suddenly talking about like, oh, and then hammer spoon. You can Let's get the composition.
Oh, and now I can hide this if I want. No, 4 bars is not enough. 2 bars is not enough. 2 measures is not enough. Okay.
Yeah.
So, how about this? What comments do you have on how I can improve on this?
I think it's a great intro. Like, it's like, you know, it brings you into the thing, but like, it's not like right off the bat like crazy. I think it's a great instinct to like not start with what was in measure 5, to have this thing here. And yeah, that like launch for the cello is very organic.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's all super organic sounding so far.
Okay. And in terms of like the what I'm doing here with that is just I wrote this again by hand, and I was trying to emphasize the downbeats. So you can see that this is louder than that. And there, I guess there's a little bit of a fade in here getting into the thing. And I have 2 concerns about this section. The first is that it may be just too basic. And I guess it's because I'm a beginner. So I always think, oh, this is too simple. I need to elaborate on this. This is too simple. I need to elaborate on that. But do you think I should be, because what I'm doing is just more or less like spelling out the chords and can be boring, I suppose. So do you think I should spice this up, and how would you go about spicing this up?
Well, I mean, you can spice things up. That's I mean, that goes without saying, right? Like there's so much you can do, and whether you should do, I mean, I guess what I would say is never go, is this too simple? Because guess what? Nobody who isn't a musician ever thinks is this is too simple, right? Like people just don't perceive music that way, right? And again, in terms of like, if you think of it in terms of like cinematography or like in visual terms, right? Like a movie can start with a still image of an empty road. Is it too simple? Like maybe a cinematographer would say yes, but most people just watch the movie, they're like put in that place, right? So it's also like you don't want to like right off the bat like throw a bunch of stuff at people. But yeah, like in terms of stuff you can do is you're emphasizing the chords, you're kind of laying out the chords, but you can always lay out kind of like extra degrees of the chords. So it could be you know, like moving around the scale. You could, you know, change the rhythm. So instead of it could be you know, like give it a little like syncopation, things like that. You could also, and I mean, you know, obviously you can add extra instruments. So it could be cool if like a triangle was here. And that's part of like what we're going to drive at. So we can take this same duet and gradually add more and more instruments to it. For a duet, I think this is like the perfect amount of information for an intro. It tells me what instruments are going to be in the composition. It gives me an idea of what the harmony is. And like, yeah, it lets me know like, okay, like this is the lead instrument. This is what you're going to hear. And to me, it's like an establishing shot, right? Like we are in New York. It's night. We're in an apartment. You know?
Okay. And I'm going to address I'm going to talk about my second concern, and then I do want to try Bo's idea in the chat of a delay with pitch shifting, which I don't think will make part of the composition in the end. Okay. I want it to be more organic, but I want to hear what that sounds like. But in any case, so my second concern is that I am in Discord is E, but I am not showing you the E. I'm showing you the fifth, and I'm showing you the third. But I'm not showing you the E. And then on the rest of them, I think I show you, the root. But if I went to the root here, it was just too high. And if I went one octave below, it was just too low. So I went with the fifth, and that made sense to me. But is this a good enough way of establishing the scene?
Yeah, it's very common too. Because, you know, like what everybody thinks of is the root. So you're already one level above. Like one thing, I don't know who said it. Maybe it's Stravinsky or Wagner or whatever. One of these kind of like early 20th century epic composers who said like throw away your first idea because everybody has that first idea. So when you hear an interlude in a rock song and there's like a rhythm guitar on it and it's playing the chord progression of the verse and then there's bass and drums, the first instinct of everybody is like, why don't I play a guitar solo with the melody of the vocals? Like Smells Like Teen Spirit, right? So throw away that idea because everybody has that idea. Then your next idea is good.
Okay, yeah, I guess you can see that this is not my first idea first because of these streams, but also I tried this many times. So this changed a lot since we started.
Right.
And this is actually not the fourth version.
Think it's
the
super
fifth.
Interesting.
Because I threw out one. I couldn't bear to listen to it again. So I actually threw out the file. So this is the fifth attempt at this.
Cool. Yeah, and like showing the thirds and fifths on the high instruments is also really cool because you're not like full on establishing your root. The lower parts are better at establishing the root anyway.
That's how it started, right?
It's like a little special.
It started here. So back then I used to have the root here, but then I took the root out and we were left with this. And I thought, okay, is this ambiguous? Does this kind of work or is it too out there? But now let's try Bo's idea.
Bo's idea is like a mixing idea, right? Obviously. So
when I think of delay with pitch shifting, I think of Supermassive. Do you know other ones that could work here?
That one is good. I use the Isotope dynamic delay. I really like its pitch shifting capabilities because you can have an adjustable and automatable window size, which is really cool.
Okay.
Yeah. And another thing, by the way, while we're on this topic, which is really cool to do, is, and I do this a lot, and I think a lot of people who didn't start from composing orchestral do, is like you do something with an effect, now try to recreate that with an instrument. So for example, what if instead of having a pitch shifted delay, if you get a piccolo flute to play the same thing delayed and one octave higher? You know, so a natural, real life delay, you know, stuff like that is also cool to try.
That is interesting because I guess that's more or less what Bo is getting to. He's saying maybe a MIDI delay, so we would be just playing the instrument in a different way, and then a kind of Frère Jacques kind of thing where the melody superimposes itself, or a fugue. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't think I want to process this too much, but we can just ever so slightly talk about the processing that I put in place here. I put a compressor to kind of glue the two together when I was writing, especially when I was changing articulations and I could hear a volume difference that was throwing me off. So I put that there. Do you usually do this kind of thing? Do you usually like compose into an effects chain?
So yeah, that's totally legitimate. For orchestral music, obviously, you don't compress as much as other stuff, and a lot of times people who mix orchestral music instead of and that is MIDI orchestral music. If it's like a recorded orchestral music, there's honestly very little processing going on. Like there's a DVD you can buy of Alan. No, it's not Alan Parsons. I'm the name is escaping me, but the person who recorded and mixed Pirates of the Caribbean. So the composer was Hans Zimmer, but then somebody recorded the score, and then that same person mixed them. And he's just the cutest, coolest guy, and I can't believe I forget his name. But anyway, so like he talks about how much in the recording, like it took them 3 days to set up the recording, but once they did that, there was not much like post processing. But yeah, like when it comes to MIDI, a lot of people, Alan Meyerson is the name of the gentleman. And he has like a 1 hour DVD where he goes over the mix. But yeah, when it comes to MIDI, a lot of people use a reverb as a glue on the master track. Just like 10%, everything goes through the same reverb. That's like, that could also kind of act as a glue. And yeah, you just don't like compress everything. You have more room for dynamic range. You also don't have to like hit -14 with an orchestral composition, unless it's Pirates of the Caribbean, in which case you have the percussions to hit -14, no problem. But like for a duet of flute and cello, you obviously, don't need to hit those loudness levels.
Okay,
yeah.
Let's put a little bit of reverb there then. I think I can hear a difference, but it's the original recording is already spacious.
Yeah, and this is like the same library, so you don't have that issue of them kind of feeling like alien to one another. But yeah, like if I use a mixture of like Labs, East West, BBC, I used to have Miroslav Philharmonic, I no longer do. Then it's really cool to kind of like use a reverb as a glue, because yeah, people use reverb and actually now even in my own album, like I'm using a reverb as a glue.
Interesting. Okay, so let's try the pitch shifting one, and if I remember correctly, this is going to pitch shift, right? Or am I wrong?
This does a frequency shift, so if we're being nitpicky, it's not a pitch shift per se. Unless there's some control of this that I'm not aware of, but it's a frequency shift, yeah.
Let's hear what this sounds like.
Sounds really nice.
I really like it. Good call, Bo.
Yeah. You can also use stuff like this, like in the composition, right? So like as you're looking to kind of make the song more crowded, and as you add instruments, like what if, because you don't want everybody to play on the same beats. It's good if like the lead plays, and then like you can use a bassoon as a delay, or a piccolo flute, or a clarinet, or whatever, right? Like, and you have all these different colors. And that's really how like old composers work, because they didn't have delays, reverbs. So if they wanted something to be like, if they wanted cello, but for it to sound spacious, they would double it with timpani. And the timpani gives you the tail, the woominess and the power, and the cello gives you like the definition and clarity and all of that. Or in the case of delays, like there's so many examples of not only call and response, but literal delays, especially like Bach did that, where it's like, oh, like piano starts playing something and then the strings start following that. Yeah, real cool stuff.
Cool. Okay, so we already talked about how we can spice this up. I don't think I am actually going to do the actual delay, though I really liked the way that sounded. But I am trying to go for something that I guess would be more organic. People could actually play. And I guess that's another thing. When I was writing this, I was thinking a lot about is there space to breathe? And is there a space for me to... I guess all the articulations here are using the bow. But if I were to use some other articulation, I would think, do you have enough time to put the bow somewhere, get it back? That kind of thing.
Right.
So, yeah, and I guess that's another question. Do you think that all of this is playable? Or did I miss something?
Yeah. No, looks pretty playable. You know where the flute is the busiest? Do you want to go to that section just for me to? But yeah, like, I mean, a good flute player obviously will have zero problem because they can also breathe circularly. But yeah, I think this whole piece, even an intermediate-ish flute player can probably play. The very last note. Go to the very last note of the flute. Yeah, that jump, I think they may need a breather for a jump of that size. They need to go like da, da, da. I don't exactly know what the notes are, but just kind of contours.
I see.
Yeah, I think that is a little bit. So it'd be like na, da, da, you know. I can't go that high, so I went.
What if I just take this out? No, I need something there.
I mean, you don't even need. You just need it like even if you take 1/16 out of the tail, that's enough for them to do the breathing. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like, just a very small. Like they need a very little amount, but like a big jump is like, because how big is that jump? Is it more than an octave?
That is from an E5 to a G6, so yes.
E to a G, yeah. Giving it a little time, and it like the passage before it is very legato too. So yeah, it's customary.
Okay. Yeah, I was.
Yeah,
I gave them 1/16 here.
You have even one more after that F sharp. You give them a little bit of breathing space.
Oh yeah, there. 1/16.
Yeah. It's also like I'm rusty with this stuff, but like I think with the flute, if you're going up a tenth, basically, you gotta do overblowing. I don't think you can finger a tenth, but I'm rusty with that stuff. I gotta check my book.
So maybe I could just change this note so it's not so hard.
You can also make it a run. So you know what I mean? Like run up to it instead of it being sudden. There's tons of stuff you can do.
Let's try that. I'm curious to hear that. So it would be no, not 16. 16 is 30 seconds.
Try. I mean, flute players can do shred. They can go to, you know, they can do really fast runs.
So we are in.
They can totally bang that out.
Yeah. So we are in C. So A, B. Let's have them do C, and then maybe jump to E and F and arrive at the G that we wanted. What are the chances of this sounding good? I guess I need to change the articulation on all but the last one. Right?
depends on the library, I guess, because you don't want it to be staccatissimo, because that would be hard to go do 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 do. But if you just go like you're just doing one breath and you're changing fingering. So I think you need to just be in legato. Staccatissimo, that would be hard. Oh, that's even slow. It can be a lot faster. It can be like twice as fast.
I need the grid to be in 30 seconds, and then get this to be 30 seconds, I suppose, right? I want them to be notes, not...
Yeah, you could.
Okay.
F is a little bit iffy to me.
And how does a run help
like maybe
here? Because you don't have to land on the note, you have some time to get there?
Yeah, like with flute, because there's two ways of changing the notes. Like a good flute player can do fingering, or they can overblow. So for like if your fingering is the note E, if you blow really hard into it, you can get the octave of the E. You can get the octave and the fifth of the E. You can get 2 octaves of the E. You can get thirds and stuff, but those are really hard. Like those they can't produce like in a moment. It's also just part of like the grammar of flute writing is that like flutes do a lot of runs. That's one thing they can do in an orchestra that like is considerably harder for other instruments to play, or it's not as clear. So if you do a run like this with the violin, the notes won't have so much clarity, but with the flute you really hear every individual note perfectly and perfectly in tune because your flute is tuned, right? So you see a lot like in compositions where flutes go like they run up to a scale, but you know it's totally legitimate to do a jump. It's not at all like incorrect what you did before.
Okay, let's hear that. I don't really like it, and Bo is suggesting something that I want to try, which is just do chromatic and land on the beat. I guess that was his idea.
Yeah, that's what I meant to. Like the G would still arrive on top of 26, but you have that little extra like transition time from the E.
Oh,
to G.
so you're not saying even beat 2, you're saying beat 1. You're saying to do something like this.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, and then just maybe in the course of like getting rid of that E, or the E could be the start, or yeah. I mean,
which E?
There are no wrong answers, obviously. That E, yeah. So in the space of that E until measure 26, that's the run that I had in mind. But no wrong answers. You can also delete the F sharp.
Okay, but let's try.
You can also do like
Can I get a little hand? There you go. That did the wrong thing. Can I get a little hand on this side? Yep. And that also does the wrong thing. So let's try this. There you go.
Yeah, you gotta add shift, yeah.
Okay, that has potential.
That's a little too fast.
But I guess it has potential.
The number of notes, yeah.
Okay, if I were to do that on the guitar, I would just slide my finger. But I guess that's not something that a flute player can do, right?
Yeah, so it is a little fast. You gotta do maybe 30 seconds. 30 seconds is as fast as you should. Because also, you know, other than like whether it's playable, somebody can play this. There are like crazy people out there. But also in the MIDI, it didn't sound too good. It didn't sound natural when it was that fast, right?
Right. So here is something that is fast, but not so much.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that sounds nice.
That's decent.
Let's hear in context.
Yeah, and it depends on what's coming after as well. So it would be good if like you were saying you want the two busy parts of the two instruments to then kind of be on top of each other. So it'd be cool if like the flute kind of like shreds a little to give the warning that like we're about to go nuts.
Yeah, I am not sure that we are going to go fast on this section, but we are not going to just have long notes hanging out like this. But this part on the flute is not fast, and that's what I was planning on using. Against this on the cello. And I'm not even sure if that works. It's just the idea that I had.
I think it's like, yeah, like, I mean, works. Something I forget to mention when you're asking if your intro works is like, get to the end of the composition, then wonder if it works. Because some things take time to work as well. You know what I mean? Like your idea that's now on measure 5, it didn't work when it was on measure 1. It took some time for you to write that intro to build to it, to make it work. I'm sending you a video also that you can check out. It's a flute concerto. You know what a concerto means?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's a flute concerto by Mozart. But like, there's tons of good flute techniques there. It's like a master class in flute writing and tons of like techniques, and it kind of really like it tells you the limits of the flute. Like anything beyond that is a bit crazy. Though modern flute players do some crazy stuff that weren't even invented back then, and they use effects. So like there are people in orchestras that their flute is going through pedals. You know, 2022, you can do whatever you want.
Right. But before
is there a flute sample specifically for runs like that? Yes. In East West there are. I don't know in BBC. I don't think in the free version there is. Probably in the advanced version there are runs like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was Bose major, not Mose Major. That was Bose major where he studied music. Interesting.
Oh, Palestrina, yeah.
Classical musicians usually play high notes very carefully. By carefully, you mean probably don't play it too loudly? Is that what you mean?
I think what he means is like if you're doing a big skip in a lot of instruments, you got to watch your tune. It's possible to arrive at the tune like in false. About the counterpoint, when we first talked with Leandro, he said he doesn't necessarily want to like learn that kind of stuff. He wants to learn more modern stuff.
I did read about the techniques and the theory behind the thing, and I guess it could be kind of fun to explore that, but I thought about just writing something that would make more sense today. I guess the kind of composition that I have here is something that could be part of some media, maybe a short or something, right?
Yeah,
it's in that style at least.
They are useful in that they're part of the like evolution. So you know, like counterpoint came and made way. You know, like each thing kind of led to another thing. You know, in Indian music, there's not a lot of like 4-part writing. It's usually like a drone and a melody, and it's a totally different feeling. You also don't go up scales, you go up harmonic series a lot. So there's like totally different ways of going about this that if you go back, like it really shows the butterfly effect. Like if you go back to the 12th century and kill Palestrina and come back to the 21st century, you will have changed the entire course of music, and maybe the top Billboard music will sound totally different. It's completely like legitimate to think that way, you know what I mean?
Okay, and I think I have enough homework to work with here. Do you want to jump to other parts and talk about other things that work or don't necessarily work that I should change about this? Because my homework is going to be to get myself acquainted with this view, because I was working in the editor, the inline editor. I'll also do the trick where I change the relative volumes of the plugins so I don't have to automate. And then I guess my homework is going to be writing the rest of it. But I wanted to do, well, first of all, that's how far I was able to get with the time that I had. But also I wanted to get some information about what I did here so that on the second half I could be better.
Yeah. I guess. Yeah, like finish this, right? And also, here's another challenge. Don't delete it. Just finish this. Even if you started hating it, don't get rid of it. Because it helps to get to the finish line on one thing. Even if you don't like it, even if you don't intend to release it. Yeah, like you learn more finishing a project than starting a new project. It's easy to start a new project. It's hard to like hit a wall in a composition and then break through it. You know what I mean? So yeah, finish this.
I'm actually liking this one, so I will finish it. I will finish this one. The other ones couldn't really work. They didn't make a lot of sense to continue working on them. But
yeah.
And
I guess this is not strictly homework, but there's two things we can do also. Like two ways we can go forward. So the next thing I was gonna make you do is write a string quartet. So you can write something from scratch, or we can keep adapting this until this is a huge orchestral thing. You know what I mean? Like, which one do you want to do? You want to make this an epic 20-minute thing, and it starts from a duet and goes to a quartet and eventually ends up as the entire orchestra, or do you want to just do separate projects?
I don't know. We'll see when I have the second half. Both could be fun. I think it could be very fun to build up on this.
Yeah. And then we can talk about stuff like developing a theme, like stuff like maybe you know it, like retrograding, reversing, that type of stuff. Are you familiar with?
Yes, I have never used it, but I know of it.
Cool. There's even hotkeys for retrogrades and stuff. It's fun. For actions.
Yeah, the more I learn and embrace what Reaper does, the more I end up liking it. All the actions and everything in here kind of makes sense. Once you get used to the mouse modifiers instead of tools, I even ended up liking the workflow here on the MIDI editor.
Yeah, I hate tools. I don't know. I'm surprised that you like tools. I hate tools so much.
Well, depending on what you're doing,
Logic
tools
Pro
make
editing
sense.
Was killing me. Yeah, I guess.
I mean, for instance,
like,
when
I use GIMP, in GIMP I like them, but in Logic, yeah, I just couldn't get used to them.
When I am doing something like this, well, not to select the items. By the way, do you usually have it like this, just a single long item, and then you dive into the items like that? Or do you have like shorter items to be able to copy and paste here on the timeline?
A mixture, but in the end, I always glue them to one item because, you know, like if I'm writing CC, like, yeah, at the point that I'm writing CC, usually they're one item. Obviously, if it's a 90-minute film and the flute is like playing 3 minutes here and 3 minutes at the end, I'm not gonna merge those two items. But yeah, one minute. It's just like less complicated, right?
I see. Yeah, but
you can always copy stuff, then glue them into one item.
Yeah, but then when I'm switching to like I am editing a podcast, I am using razors a lot. So I have to hold down keys on my keyboard to be able to do that, which is not the end of the world. It's just not the most natural thing. So I guess having tools would make sense in that context. But I'm embracing what Reaper does, and I'm liking it.
Yeah.
It really does a good job.
You should watch that Kenny video where he makes a cycle action for razor editing, and he says he learned it from me.
Cool. So when you're doing a whole movie, like a 90-minute thing, you just drop the whole 90-minute edit on the timeline and you start writing that way?
It depends. First of all, I should say that I've only done one feature film so far, composition wise. But so there it was actually not really practical to do it in one project because there were not a full orchestra, but like a minimal kind of like a 10-piece orchestra writing on some of the tracks or on some scenes. And in some scenes, it was literally like 80s music that they had licensed. So it was really not like the whole thing being one orchestra. So I did go like, this is a project for scene one, this is a project for scene two. Then I bounced them all and brought them into one project for mixing. But yeah, you can do the whole thing. You can like tempo map and stuff. If I foresee that I'm gonna get a lot of notes from a director, I do every scene in a different project so that when they nitpick, I can just go and change that project. But if I know that they're gonna be like, we trust whatever you do, yeah, I do it in one project.
Ah.
And if it's like a movie under 10 minutes, I do it in one project.
I always thought that you would do multiple projects for, I guess, think of these as different songs. Not really, but.
I guess it's about the type of film. So if like, for example, if in a film you're always using like the same instruments, it makes sense to be in the same project, because what if I found a cool effect on my flute that would really change the sound? I don't want to go to like multiple projects and do that. And then in Reaper, you also have sub projects. So that also brings a lot of fun ideas to the table. Yeah, it really depends. Like, definitely it's a game time decision. And sometimes I even like do a whole project. 90% of it is in one project, and then this one scene I'm like, no, I want to go to a sub project. If you if you ever have 12 hours to spare and you want to watch me compose a score for the Spitfire competition, I wrote the whole thing in one project, but there was one part where I was creating a bunch of noise, and I just didn't want that part to be in the same project. I felt like it would be like too much, so I did a sub project for that.
Interesting. Nice. Good to know. Right. And Bo clarified that he was talking about the high note being carefully played in the sense of not being too loud. They know they're going to cut through the entire orchestra with a high note. And he liked the fast run over here, suggesting to try and use it as a motif.
I think it's cool. Yeah. Yeah, with the flute, we talked about it like when we were going through the orchestra, right? Like flute is such a small instrument, and still you can hear a single flute over like 80 people playing the strings, right? It can really like cut through.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I like this.
If you tell them to play loud, they'll play loud.
Yeah, but there is something that I don't like about this, and maybe there is something we can do to fix it. It sounds like... I can hear every note, and I think I would like more like of a portamento kind of thing. The note opening up.
If you want that, flute is not the right instrument for a really portamento sounding thing. Yeah, you could use... Well, you couldn't use a trombone because a trombone slides up to a fifth maximum, and you can do the fifth of a fifth by overblowing in the end, but it's not a like organic sounding glissando. Yeah, like clarinets and bassoons can somewhat make it be a slide, but like all of them have like holes, right? So the change between the holes will be ultimately audible unless you use a string or use a trombone, or there is like a way of making flutes sound like a slide, and that is they use a mixture of changing the fingering but also kind of like moving their mouth, because good flute players can change the like shape of their mouth and use it as an extension to kind of tune like up, a semitone or down a semitone every note. Trumpet players can do it too. So like by mixing that, they make it somewhat portamento. But yeah, like in my opinion, if you want it to be really like woo, a flute is just not the right choice.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, and Bo was suggesting something else to change the velocity of the notes, make the first note super soft and then gradually up to the final velocity. That could give a similar effect or intent to what I think makes sense here. This kind of
because they won't all
kind
be
of
like blown in the same way, right? They always go woo, like by the end they are overblowing kind of thing.
So I guess it would be, maybe this is too drastic, something like this. And from the conversation that we were having, I understand that you leave this kind of thing for when the composition is almost over, right? Writing the...
Yeah, you can do it as you go.
Okay.
Yeah, like nothing wrong with that. But yeah, for me, it's like, feels like an efficient way to like think of just the notes and then think, because if I'm writing a score, I do the same thing, right? Like I write the thing, then I go and start filling in dynamics and expressions and articulations most of the time. Unless I'm like, okay, now we're in a staccato passage where the whole point or the whole motif is like the first two notes are pianissimo and then it's fortissimo. In that case, like I'll do that as I go because it's the dynamics are part of the motif or the expression is part of the motif. But if it's a secondary characteristic just to kind of make it sound more natural, I worry about that after the composition is done.
I see. You see how I'm struggling to draw what I want here? That's what I'm talking about, that maybe it would be better if I just did it like this. Because...
no, I didn't see the struggle. Can you do it again?
I'm still struggling, but let's hear it. I guess that's better, yeah. And a pause before the run starts. Short pause as in breath. That makes sense. And
yeah,
while I
little,
don't...
little breath, yeah.
16th?
You know, something that's helpful with all woodwinds and brass is like to go like, just go, you know what I mean? Like try to blow it. And then when you run out of breath yourself, you're like, okay, it stands to reason that other people
I was whistling it.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
Whistling is even harder because, I mean, when you blow, you're not doing pitch.
Yeah. I guess...
But it's safe. It's very safe.
Yeah. I think that works. All right. So homework is I have to write that action to toggle used CC lanes. And I have to write the second part. And
yeah, just finish the thing.
Relative volumes with plugin volumes instead of automation. Anything else?
I guess like decide if you want your next string quartet to be on top of this or if you want to start from scratch.
Okay, I think
harder way is to build on top of this. That's the harder way.
Absolutely, yeah, I can see that. No, but I was actually I had another idea in mind, and we can talk about what we want to do. But I thought that maybe instead of doing orchestral for our next journey, our next project, we could do something else because we already did a song that is like acoustic song, a singer-songwriter kind of thing, orchestral kind of thing. I was thinking about going synthesizers.
Yeah, could do.
And
what do you have synth-wise?
The idea that I had,
it's like, no offense to Arya synth, but nah.
No, I did not have that in mind. What I wanted was to have a good understanding of the basics. I do know the theory behind subtractive synthesis, but I thought we could just get a very basic subtractive synthesizer and talk about how to get it to sound good. So, there are plenty that we can use, and Resynth is not super nice because it is it does
it's also additive, no?
Resynth, you can use it as a this is kind of an oscillator, so you can use it for subtractive synthesis and pair that with re-EQ. I thought that could be fun.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
And then you can use this for LFOs, right? Parameter modulation for LFOs. So, but the problem with Resynth is that it does not, it aliases a lot. It doesn't oversample.
Yeah, no, it's like, to me, it's not a decent synth, honestly. Like, and like with synths, I don't know, with synths, like the interface does matter. I don't want to have to picture the envelope, right? And like, I don't want to, like, yes, LFOs are possible the way you said, but like, it's a bit too building blocks. Like if you're going to do that, you might as well learn VCV rack.
Which is something that we could do.
That's really cool stuff.
But
true.
We can also use
I
Surge.
haven't used VCV2 and VCV rack 1 I haven't used in like years. So I would have to, I'd have to remind myself.
Yeah, the issue that I have with VCV rack is that the developer behind VCV rack, he doesn't seem to be the nicest guy, and their whole community around VCV rack. There are some great people there, but then also, I don't know. I don't think I want to talk about VCV rack on the stream just because I don't want to promote them. But the Surge people are great. We could use Surge.
I've never used it. Okay, looks run of the mill. Yeah, everything here is makes logical sense.
Or we could
they look different, but they're all the same, right?
Yeah, we could use Helm. There are plenty of tools that we can use, so I don't think we need to focus too much on the tools, but just the idea of we explored a little bit of one genre, then we could explore a little bit of synthesizers. I think it could be fun.
Sure, yeah, whatever you want.
Right, okay, so I think that's it for now. Thank you very much, Arya, for all your help and for everything that you teach me. It has been a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to meeting you again on Monday on your channel, right?
Yeah, I'm like, I think 60% done with the tags, and of course I have some questions and stuff, so I'll ask you those on Monday.
All right. And do you want to do that on my channel, or do you want to do that on your channel, so people know where to go?
Yeah, let's keep them on your channel because they've been on your channel today. Actually, I think I told you before, but one of the viewers of my channel is now making his own website. So today I showed him how to like copy the code and kind of how I use it. There were stuff that I forgot, like how to open a github.io, so I just sent him to go watch all the videos. And I guess we saw that like a big part of what we did was migrating from Wix to GitHub.
Yeah.
So without that part, it actually like they can watch like 5 hours of live streams and be basically up to speed with how things are done.
Yeah. For sure, the hardest part is migrating existing data. If you're starting from scratch, it's much easier. Right. Okay. I guess in a sense we are still migrating, right? Because all the tags and the dates and all the metadata is part of the migration.
Oh, is it?
Well, you are applying it to old content, so I guess it is migrating old content.
It's like a batch. Yeah. I see. And then for new content, I'll just put the tags in and we'll talk about that Monday. Okay,
we'll talk about that Monday, and tomorrow I'll be back here writing some more JS effects. We will talk about how to make our data structures easier to use and also faster. So I think that's going to be fun. All right, have a good one. Bye. Oh, keyboard shortcut doesn't work. Come on.